She boarded like everyone else. Row 9, CP didn't speak, didn't ask for anything. But mid-flight, the radar went dark, cockpit silent, flight attendants panicking. Then just as suddenly, the radar blinked back online, autopilot re-engaged, and every crew member turned to her, because no one else had moved, but she had. If you believe comm doesn't ask permission, type row 9 didn't blink. The commercial flight was entirely routine medium passenger capacity. Standard domestic route, early morning departure, cutting through soft haze, drifting over the ocean below. She boarded last among all passengers. Single carry-on bag, completely neutral expression, revealing nothing about her purpose or background. Settled quietly into row 9, seat B, nodded politely at no one in particular. Flight attendants offered complimentary beverages during their routine service. She declined courteously, spent most of the initial flight time observing the wing structure through her window, occasionally jotting detailed notes in a small worn leather notebook. One curious child from a nearby row asked her with innocent directness, "Are you a pilot, lady?" She smiled genuinely, but offered no verbal response. Atmospheric turbulence began developing approximately halfway through the scheduled flight duration. Initially mild and barely noticeable, then progressively sharper and more concerning. The captain's voice came clearly over the cabin address system, maintaining professional calm, but with obvious underlying tension. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing minor radar calibration issues. Nothing to worry about. Flight crew is addressing the situation." 10 minutes later, complete communication. Silence from the cockpit. Cabin crew members began whispering urgently in the forward galley area. The backup communication systems weren't responding to standard protocols. Cockpit door remained sealed shut. Electronic access panel showed no response to crew override attempts. She closed her leather notebook with deliberate precision, unbuckled her seat belt without haste, stood and walked calmly toward the galley area where flight attendants were clustered in obvious concern. Her movement was confident and purposeful, suggesting someone familiar with aircraft operations despite her civilian passenger status. Other passengers remained seated, most unaware of the developing technical crisis affecting their flight's navigation systems. The few who noticed her movement assumed she was simply requesting assistance from the crew or using the forward restroom facilities. Her calm demeanor provided no indication that she understood the severity of their current situation, but her direct path toward the galley suggested specific intent rather than casual passenger movement. Flight attendants were discussing emergency procedures in hushed voices, trying to avoid creating panic among passengers while addressing the unprecedented communication failure. Standard protocols provided no guidance for complete radar and communication blackout during routine commercial flight operations. The situation represented a potential catastrophic failure that could compromise passenger safety if navigation systems couldn't be restored quickly. Without radar contact, air traffic control couldn't provide guidance for safe landing procedures or coordinate with other aircraft in their flight path. The pilots were operating blind, relying only on basic instruments that might be insufficient for safe navigation in increasingly challenging weather conditions. Emergency protocols required maintaining current heading and altitude while attempting to restore communication with ground control. But if the technical failures continued, they would eventually need to execute emergency landing procedures without external guidance. Fuel reserves were sufficient for extended flight duration, but weather conditions were deteriorating rapidly. Time was becoming a critical factor in resolving the technical crisis before it escalated into genuine emergency situation. The flight crew's whispered discussions revealed their growing concern about the unprecedented nature of the system failures. Multiple redundant safety systems had failed simultaneously, suggesting either catastrophic equipment malfunction or external interference. Neither possibility offered encouraging prospects for rapid resolution using standard maintenance procedures. Her approach toward the galley indicated that someone aboard the aircraft understood the situation better than the trained flight crew and possessed knowledge that might provide solutions beyond their technical training. Her notebook contained observations that suggested professional familiarity with aircraft systems rather than casual passenger interest. someone who had been quietly monitoring flight operations with expertise that exceeded normal civilian understanding. The question was whether her apparent knowledge could address technical failures that had stumped experienced aviation professionals. A concerned flight attendant immediately stepped into her path with professional authority. "Ma'am, please return to your seat immediately. We're dealing with a technical situation." She raised one hand in a calm, non-threatening gesture that somehow conveyed quiet control over the developing crisis, then reached directly into a side maintenance panel not accessible to the general public and pressed two precisely positioned recess switches. Interior cabin lights flickered briefly. All passenger display screens rebooted simultaneously with electronic chirping sounds. In the sealed cockpit, the primary radar display suddenly blinked back to full operational life. Autopilot systems reinitialized with mechanical precision. Navigation computers realigned with GPS satellites and ground control frequencies. Both pilots gasped audibly with relief and amazement. "Who the hell just did that?" A bewildered flight attendant ran toward the cockpit. "Someone from row 9. She just walked up and somehow that maintenance panel requires specialized clearance and technical training," the captain interrupted. "I don't think she asked for clearance or is training," the attendant replied with obvious confusion. The co-pilot immediately checked the passenger manifest through the restored computer systems. No complete last name listed, just cryptic initials in the booking record. "She's not registered crew. She's not even properly logged in our passenger database." In the main cabin, concerned passengers turned to observe her quietly walking back toward row 9 with the same calm confidence she had displayed throughout the emergency. She sat down normally, fastened her seatbelt according to standard procedure, reopened her leather notebook, and continued writing. The visibly shaken captain emerged from the cockpit, something he rarely did during active flight operations, looked directly at her seated position. She looked back with steady eye contact. "Thank you," he whispered with genuine gratitude and obvious bewilderment. She simply nodded once in professional acknowledgement. Her intervention had lasted less than 2 minutes, but had resolved technical failures that could have resulted in catastrophic emergency landing procedures. The maintenance panel she had access contained override switches that most commercial aviation personnel didn't know existed. Backup systems that were designed for extraordinary circumstances requiring manual intervention beyond standard operational protocols. Her knowledge of their location and function suggested extensive familiarity with aircraft technical specifications that exceeded normal passenger understanding. The precision of her switch activation indicated someone who had either designed those systems or received specialized training in their emergency application. But her passenger status and lack of official crew identification created obvious questions about her authority to access restricted aircraft systems. Questions that the successful resolution of their crisis made less important than understanding how she had accomplished what trained pilots couldn't. The restored radar and communication systems were functioning perfectly better than they had operated before the mysterious failures occurred. As if her intervention had not just resolved the immediate crisis, but optimized the overall system performance, the flight continued to its scheduled destination without further technical difficulties. But every crew member remained acutely aware of the passenger in row 9 who had somehow saved their flight. Her notebook contained additional observations that suggested ongoing monitoring of aircraft systems throughout the remainder of the flight. Someone who understood that technical failures could recur and was prepared to intervene again if necessary. But she made no attempt to communicate with a flight crew or explain her capabilities. No effort to seek recognition for her intervention or establish her credentials with aviation authorities. Just quiet competence that had resolved a crisis through knowledge and action rather than discussion or debate. The kind of professional behavior that suggested extensive experience with emergency situations requiring immediate technical solutions. Experience that someone with her apparent civilian status shouldn't possess according to normal aviation security protocols, but which had just prevented potential disaster for everyone aboard their aircraft. Ground control personnel ran comprehensive diagnostic procedures immediately post-landing. Technical analysis couldn't explain how complex navigation systems had been reset from the passenger cabin area. Maintenance crews with decades of aviation experience had never observed anyone successfully access that particular panel, not without specialized master keys and advanced technical training. Federal Aviation Administration investigators reviewed internal security video recordings from the aircraft's monitoring systems. Her face was partially obscured by camera angles, but sufficient facial recognition data triggered an immediate silent alert in classified government databases. Her operational code name illuminated across secure screens. Sable 9, former avionics systems architect with highest-level security clearances. Last documented deployment flight infrastructure recovery operations during classified NATO communications blackout exercises. Current status off-grid independent contractor security clearance tier black authorization. She had personally designed significant portions of the navigation system that had experienced catastrophic failure and had deliberately buried the emergency override protocols herself during original development. No aviation authority had expected her presence on a routine commercial flight without official notification or security of escort. Her leather notebook filled with detailed technical corrections, comprehensive system redesign notes, and one handwritten line. This should never happen again. Airport security personnel couldn't legally detain her for questioning. No official jurisdiction over someone with her clearance levels in operational status. By the time federal investigators returned to the passenger terminal, she had disappeared completely without leaving any traceable contact information. But the aircraft now carried a permanent silent designation on its maintenance manifest. Row 9, protected status. Her intervention had revealed vulnerabilities in commercial aviation systems that threatened passenger safety on a much larger scale. The technical failures they had experienced weren't random equipment malfunctions. They were systematic weaknesses that could be exploited by hostile forces. Her emergency repairs had included security upgrades that protected not just their specific aircraft, but the entire commercial aviation network. Modifications that closed security gaps she had identified through her analysis of the crisis. Her notebook observations indicated she had been conducting covert assessment of commercial aviation vulnerabilities during what appeared to be routine passenger travel. A one-person audit of systems she had helped design years earlier, identifying problems that had developed since her original deployment. The flight emergency had been an opportunity to test solutions she had been developing independently to verify that her theoretical fixes would work under actual crisis conditions with real passenger safety at risk. Her successful intervention proved that she remained the world's leading expert on aviation systems that she had created, and that she continued monitoring the safety of systems that millions of passengers depended on daily. But her off-grid status meant she operated without official oversight or bureaucratic constraints, free to identify problems and implement solutions according to her own professional judgment rather than organizational policies. Her methods exceeded normal regulatory procedures, but achieved results that conventional approaches couldn't match. Aviation authorities couldn't officially acknowledge her contributions because her operational methods existed outside their legal frameworks. But they understood that her intervention had prevented potential disasters that could have affected thousands of flights. Her continuing involvement in commercial aviation safety represented an unofficial insurance policy against catastrophic system failures. Someone with unmatched expertise monitoring vulnerabilities that official agencies might overlook or be unable to address quickly enough. The Sable 9 designation became a legendary reference within classified aviation security circles. Someone whose presence meant that critical systems were under protection beyond normal institutional capabilities, but whose anonymity was essential for maintaining the operational flexibility that made her interventions possible. Her story became a reminder that some of the most important safety work happened completely outside public knowledge or official recognition. Flight crew members throughout the commercial aviation industry began sharing the story in quiet, respectful conversations. There was someone in row 9. She fixed everything that was broken. No one saw her arrive. No one saw her depart. The captain submitted a classified operational addendum to federal aviation authorities. Flight systems restored by unidentified female technical specialist. No further action required. All navigation systems operating at optimal parameters. Months later, a new directive appeared in commercial aviation training manuals. If passenger requests access to mid-cabin maintenance panel, verify Seat 9B assignment and immediately step aside. Aviation systems engineers began conducting comprehensive cross-reference analysis of older technical schematics and discovered her professional initials on far more critical systems than anyone had previously realized. Her design influence extended throughout the commercial aviation infrastructure that millions of passengers trusted with their lives daily. She never appeared again on any monitored commercial flight. But every time a radar system experienced unexpected restoration or navigation, computers resolve mysterious glitches. Someone would discreetly check passenger manifests for row 9 assignments, just in case. Airport security personnel received informal briefings about recognizing individuals whose operational status exceeded normal civilian passenger protocols. People who might appear without advanced notice, carrying capabilities that official systems couldn't verify through standard databases. The Row 9 protected designation became an unofficial signal throughout aviation security networks, an indication that certain flights carried passengers whose presence provided security benefits beyond normal travel arrangements, but whose identity and activities remained classified beyond standard security clearance levels. Commercial pilots began requesting Row 9 passenger information before departure, not for security concerns, but for reassurance. Knowing that someone with her capabilities might be aboard provided confidence during challenging weather conditions or technical difficulties. Her legendary status spread through aviation communities as an example of expertise that transcended institutional boundaries. Someone whose knowledge and skills remained available to protect passenger safety regardless of official organizational affiliations. Flight attendants learned to recognize signs of technical knowledge among passengers that exceeded normal civilian understanding, and to respect intervention from individuals who demonstrated capabilities that official training hadn't prepared them to evaluate. Aviation maintenance crews discovered system improvements on aircraft that had experienced her interventions. Modifications that enhanced safety and performance beyond manufacturer specifications. Upgrades that were implemented so skillfully that they appeared to be original equipment features. Her continuing influence on commercial aviation safety became an invisible force protecting millions of travelers. Someone whose work improved systems without seeking credit or official recognition for her contributions. The ultimate example of professional service that prioritized results over acknowledgement. Years later, aviation engineering students would study aircraft systems that contained her design innovations without knowing her identity, learning from technical solutions that had saved lives through quiet competence rather than public acclaim. Her approach became a benchmark for engineering excellence that served humanity rather than seeking personal advancement. Commercial aviation safety statistics showed measurable improvement in system reliability following her intervention. Fewer technical failures, faster problem resolution, enhanced passenger protection during emergency situations. Evidence that her continuing involvement provided benefits that extended far beyond individual flight operations. But statistical analysis couldn't identify the source of these improvements or predict when her next intervention might occur. She remained as mysterious as she was effective, operating according to her own professional standards rather than institutional expectations. If you believe the people who fix what breaks never need applause, subscribe to The Ordinary Heroes.